Morning. Welcome to this Fairfax County Board of Building and Fire Code Appeals hearing. Today is Wednesday, May the 12th, 2021. My name is Carla Guerra Moran, the secretary to this board, and I would like to go over a few guidelines for the hearing before I turn this over to our chairman, Mr. David Conover. First, this hearing is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to all on our website after the hearing. Please identify yourself by first and last name each time you speak. This is important to maintain an accurate audio record of this hearing. Should you have any difficulty during the hearing, please feel free to email me at carla.guerra-moran@fairfaxcounty.gov. That's Carla, C-A-R-L-A, GUERRA-MORAN@fairfaxcounty.gov, and I can inform the chairman of your difficulties and attempt to assist with them. We will be expecting a number of plan review staff from the building division to be attending the hearing today. They will be observing only and will not be participating. Are there any questions before we begin the hearing? I will now turn this over to the chairman of the Fairfax County Board of Building and Fire Code Appeals, Mr. Conover. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Carla, and thanks to other staff of Land Development Services for your efforts in setting up this meeting, as well as the meetings we've had over the last year through this platform. For the record, it is 10:03 a.m. on Wednesday, May 12th, 2021. I'd like to open the May meeting of the Fairfax County Board of Building and Fire Code Appeals, or we may call it the board, at which we will conduct a hearing on two appeals scheduled to be heard at this meeting. To conduct this meeting and hearing wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, the board needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record to address appeals that have been filed with the building, property maintenance, or fire official in a timely manner. Conducting this hearing wholly electronically will be a bit challenging, so I ask you in advance for your patience. Because each member of the board is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating in this meeting to state their name and the location from which they are participating. In doing that, I would ask that each board member pay close attention to ensure you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we'll vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. George Page, are you on?
I'm here in my home in Herndon.
Okay, thank you. Mike Grinnell? I see an MG. Mike, you may be muted. Mike? I'll come back to Mike. Rob Fisher?
Yes, sir. I'm here in my home. This is Rob Fisher. I'm here in my home in Vienna.
Thank you. Darren Shoemate?
Darren Shoemate's here. I'm in Alexandria, Virginia.
Thank you. Amado Fernandez?
Amado Fernandez is here. I'm in Chantilly, Virginia.
Wayne Bryant?
Wayne Bryant is here. I'm in Vienna, Virginia.
Thank you, Wayne. I'm going to come back again to Mike Grinnell.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that the MG that you're seeing is one of our building plan review staff members.
Okay, thank you. So I will note that Mike is not on the call. I may check back during the, at least before we start the hearing again to verify that he's confirmed that he's not on the call. And I'm...
Excuse me, Mike Grinnell is not attending this meeting today.
Oh, Thank you, Carla. That's helpful. And I'm Dave Conover. I'm calling in from my home in Great Falls. At this point, I'm going to ask Darren Shoemate to take over as chair so that I can be might be heard to make a motion. And I would move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other members of the board. I ask for a second and then we'll vote. Is there a second?
Second, Amato Fernandez.
Thank you, Amato. Okay, is there anybody on the board, George, Rob, Darren, Amato, Wayne, that would vote no? Hearing none, the motion passes. Having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels the emergency procedures, the fact that we're meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access, including appellants and appellees on our agenda this meeting. At this point, I'm passing the role again of chairman to Darren Shoemate, so that I can make the following motion. I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the board to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of the board and the physical presence of the public and appellants and appellees, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the board may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated audio-video conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 571-429-5982 and entering access code 241725682 #. I ask for a second of the motion and then we'll vote. Is there a second?
It's Rob Fisher, I second.
Thank you, Rob. Is there anybody on the board that would vote no to that motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. It's next required that all the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and/or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations in the discharge of the board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Again, I'm going to pass the role of chairman to Darren Shoemate and make the following motion. I move that the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and/or are statutorily required and necessary to continue operations in the discharge of the board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Is there a second to that motion?
Second, Amato Fernandez.
Thank you, Amato. Again, I'll ask the board, is there anybody that would vote no to that motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll have two appeals to hear today. The first one will be a continuing Wainwright Drive, 1757 Wainwright Drive, which is a continuation of our past couple meetings. And then the second one would be Capital One Block A. I note we have copies of all correspondence and supporting documentation on the appeal. Thank you, Carla. And I would ask that if there are other members of the public in attendance that have not made themselves known, to do so now. So I'm going to ask, is the appellant, are the appellants here? First, I'm going to ask for Mr. Salinas. Are you on the line?
Yes, Ricky Salinas here from my office in Manassas, Virginia.
Thank you, Rick, Mr. Salinas. And Mr. Salinas, will you, is there anybody else that you would be asking to speak to your appeal on the line as well?
Yes, I do believe Miss Laura Avis, the homeowner, is also in this meeting.
Okay.
Hi, this is Laura Avis in Reston, Virginia.
Good morning, Ms. Avis. And I'm going to ask, moving forward, when we get to Mr. Salinas's appeal, that I'm going to ask Mr. Salinas to essentially call on you as relevant as part of his testimony and presentation, because technically he is the appellant. So I'll let him control when you speak and so on and so forth, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. I just like to address the impact to me. So
Understood. Thank you. And are there others that are on the line regarding the Capital One appeal? I'd maybe ask Raymond Grill, who is the appellant, to introduce himself or say that he's here, and if there's anybody else on his team to make themselves known now. Going once.
No, Raymond, you're on mute.
I see an RG.
I apologize. I thought I was off of mute. So yeah, Raymond Brill, fire protection engineer in my home in Clifton, Virginia. Clay Jackson from Gensler may also be participating in these hearings, as well as Jared Krieger from Gensler, who are the architects for the project. Okay,
and as I did with Mr. Salinas, I'll consider you the lead point person since you're the appellant, and let you orchestrate and organize how others on your, if you will, team would care to speak when it's your turn or answer questions, okay?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Good morning. Okay, for the appeal, for these appeals, both the appellant and the appellee can appeal a decision of the board to the State Technical Review Board. The application for appeal must be submitted to the State Technical Review Board within 21 days following the receipt of the board's decision on the appeal. Please note that a majority vote of the board is needed to overturn the building official's ruling, and a tie vote goes in favor of the board, but I as chairman will only vote to break a tie. So the order of the meeting with respect to the appeal we will hear today is as follows. And I note, Mr. Grill, this is slightly different than I think past meetings you've presented at. So we've added a couple of items. The appellant will present a maximum 2-minute summary of the basis for the appeal of the county position. So this is kind of like an opening statement, which is something we've added. The county will then present a 2-minute summary max of the basis for their position. As chair, I'll try and frame the issue before the board, and then the appellant will speak and present their case, and the board will have an opportunity to ask questions of them at that time. So that's typically what we've done way in the past. So you'll have plenty of time to make your presentation. And again, both appellants, if you have someone that you would care to speak at that time, you can do that. The county will speak and present its case, and the board will have an opportunity to ask questions. The appellant can provide additional information in response to prior testimony, followed by the county staff if they choose to provide additional information. I tend to I don't like the word rebuttal, but that's technically what it is. If either party has questions for the other, this is new, Mr. Grill. If either party has questions for the other, they can direct them through the chair to the other party. We want to eliminate the parties speaking across the aisle, so to speak, but we certainly recognize the value, and either party may have a question for the other. Just work it through me and I will orchestrate it. Having completed opening summaries, 2 rounds of testimony and questions, I'll close the public hearing phase of the meeting. I'll ask the board members for a motion and a second as to the disposition of the appeal. And with a motion before the board, we'll discuss the motion and vote. If in the board discussion a new issue is raised that was not discussed during the hearing, I'll feel compelled to reopen the hearing for the appellant and the appellee to both speak only on that issue. So I'll always try and remind board members before we close the public hearing, if they got any question on their minds, to bring it up then. I'd ask when you're not speaking, you put your phone on mute. As county staff has already indicated, if there's a lot of background noise or other sound that's disrupting the meeting, the county staff will mute everyone, and then you'll have to dial *6 to be unmuted. When you'd like to speak, please indicate by saying request to speak and your name and allow me to recognize you. So I would now invite those on the call participating as or on behalf of the appellant to introduce themselves and state their affiliation. This will be for the first appeal, Mr. Salinas. And then I would like to now invite those on the call participating on the county to introduce themselves again and state their position with the county. And again, that's on the first appeal. Once that we have a motion and we've disposed of the first appeal, then I'll do the same thing for the second appeal, asking those that are with the appellant side to introduce themselves and the county likewise. Is there anybody else on the call who has not introduced themselves other than the county plan review staff that are observing? Is there anybody else? Okay, Mr. Salinas, the floor is yours. We're going to start off with your appeal.
Understood, Mr. Chairman. Just to make sure, this is the 2-minute summary, correct?
That's yes. You're gonna yes, and again, as you know, and others know, this is not the first time we've dealt with this. So it's really I guess a summary of new information.
Thank you.
Opening statement, and then the county will do the same thing, and then you'll have whatever time you need to go into more depth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for my confusion. I am here with Mrs. Avis, owner of 1757 Wainwright Drive. We are here to discuss the letter that was ordered to be updated with the name of the inspector as well as his certifications to satisfy last month's table hearing. The same letter has been submitted, and now we're just hoping for a favorable decision on the appeal. If Mrs. Avis has anything to say on her 2-minute opening statement, I invite her to do so now.
No, I'll defer till.
Thank you, Ms. Avis. Mr. Salinas, are you, is that your opening statement?
That is my 2-minute summary, yes.
Okay, thank you. Who will be representing the county? Richard, is it you?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will be representing the county, and with us today we have Hayden Cotting, who is the county assistant attorney, and James Cantor, who is the chief of the inspections. In summary, we will be responding to the letter that was presented by Mr. Salinas last Friday, and that will pretty much conclude my summary. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Salinas, you have the floor for whatever time you need. Again, I would mention this. Well, I'll leave the floor to you, and it's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, good morning, Ms. Avis, members of this board, and everybody from the Fairfax County Land Development Services staff that is with us today. It is an honor to be with you. I thank you once again for this opportunity to speak with you. Well, I am hoping that today's hearing is going to be a cut and dry one, in which an updated letter from Waterline Renewal Technologies, or WRT, is presented to this board with its required NASCO certifications, which it lacked in last month's hearing, and that this updated letter will satisfy Fairfax as well as this board. I'm not quite sure if this will be as clear cut based off of some emails that Mr. James and I, or sorry, Mr. Grace and I had yesterday. I'm hoping that I am mistaken, but we'll see how this goes. I'm hoping that my doubts won't have any support to my assumptions. As of last Friday, May 7th of this year, WRT finally got me the revised letter that I had requested after the receipt of the written order from the April 14th hearing, in which I was ordered to secure and submit to the county a letter from Waterline Renewal Technologies indicating a review of the subject CIPP installation, as evidenced by video of the installation, complies with the product manufacturer's installation instructions and applicable codes and standards. Such letter is to include the name of the person who performed the review of the installation, a statement that they are certified as competent to perform such reviews and assessments, and the details of the accreditation program under which they are certified. I was able to secure the aforementioned letter with the name of the NASCO inspector, that being Mr. Dan Reed, and his NASCO credentials, that being U-1120-7030100238. Mr. Reed has been in the lining industry for well over 15 years. He was part of the group of trainers that certified me and my team back when we first got into the inversion lining business. In the past 11 years, he has also helped me install some very difficult and challenging liners all over Maryland, DC, and Virginia. He was also part of the research and development team at LMK. I can testify the man knows his product and this industry. Mr. Reed has 3 NASCO certifications under his name, that being PACP, MACP, and LACP. That last one, Lateral Assessment and Certification Program, is the specific certification that Mr. Cantor in the February hearing mentioned that he required certifying inspectors to have in order to be considered as a qualified inspector for the review of this and potentially future liners. Again, I reviewed the recording of our April 14th hearing extensively. We went over the information that my WRT letter lacked. And if added, it would be enough to satisfy the county. That additional information was the updated WRT letter, the name of the person who performed the review, and the credentials. I updated my letter with the information requested. The name of the inspector with his NASCO certs was supposed to be all that was needed. This was supposed to be a clear-cut and dry update and resubmittal. Now, based on this latest email chain with Mr. Grace, it seems that he is walking back and will bring up issues with who or what is considered a third party again. I believe, and it is to my understanding, that we have already had this debate and got past this point. Waterline Renewal Technologies was going to be an allowable certifying body for this appeal for as long as the inspector or reviewer of the video was NASCO trained and certified with NASCO credentials. Mr. Dan Reed has nearly every single credential that NASCO has to offer for lateral pipe and manhole inspections. Under NASCO's standards, which is the certifying body that Fairfax County specifically set as the authority that sets the standards as to who is competent to make judgment calls as to the condition of completed liners, has trained, tested, and certified Mr. Reed not once, not twice, but 3 times for 3 different, not so easy to get certifications. NASCO themselves are fully confident that Mr. Reed is competent and knows what he is looking at and talking about when he reviewed the video for the completed liner that is in the sewer lateral for 1757 Wainwright Drive. Fairfax County can rest assured that Mr. Reed, with his 1.5 decades of experience in installing liners, training installers, servicing defective and failed liners, doing testing, research, and development on all types of installation equipment, lining, and epoxy coating products for small residential pipe applications, manholes, tank chambers, as well as major industrial and municipal applications that require the simultaneous lining of large diameter pipes with multiple smaller diameter lateral tie-ins, that requires service from a live manhole in the middle of a busy street in small town America, as well as big cities all over the country and the world. With his many years as a student and educator of everything lining and epoxy coating of fracturable pipes and manholes alike, he is fully, absolutely, and completely competent, qualified, as well as capable to make a judgment call on this small pipe diameter liner installed in a 4-inch cast iron sewer for a residential application for 1757 Wainwright Drive. As I mentioned to Mr. Grace in the copy of that email chain that he provided yesterday to this board on the 11th hour, the liner is good. It has been good since the first day it was installed. The sewer for which it was installed has never backed up since the installation of this liner. A lot of money and personal property has been saved from guaranteed damages due to excavation, thanks to the installation of this liner. A very large tree and its tree flange have remained free of damage and compromise. Again, thanks to the installation of this liner. The liner is under warranty with Freedom Plumbers and LMK. It has upgraded and vastly improved the functionality for the utility in which it was installed. The homeowner, a Fairfax County taxpayer, has been taken care of. The technology worked. To the trained and professional eye, it is a beautiful installation. The manufacturer, as a third-party certifying body, is already instituted in Fairfax County with other specialty products. My manufacturer certified this specialized liner with a NASCO certified inspector who has a specific LACP credentials needed to qualify him as an approved and competent inspector. All requirements have been met. All precedent backs this case. After nearly a year of going back and forth with this liner and others at a local and state level, let's please finally conclude this matter, and may the same be in favor of this extremely effective specialized technology we so lovingly call no-dig small pipe diameter lateral lining, or CIPP. I ask this board to uphold my appeal and allow for the updated waterline renewal technology letter that was provided to this board, the county, and the homeowner to be sufficient for the approval of this inspection. And with that, I conclude my opening statement. I also open the floor for Ms. Avis if she has a statement as well.
Thank you, Mr. Salinas.
Hi, my name is Laura Avis, and I've owned the home at 1757 Wainwright Drive since 1993. I'd like to make a statement as the person who is most impacted by the decision of the county and the board. I ask that you consider my input to make a fair decision that does not cause undue burden to me. I also ask that you evaluate this case based on the evidence provided. It is clear to me that there is some friction between the contractor and the county. That should be of no relevance to this decision. My understanding is that this decision made for this case does not set a precedent for any other permit decision. I provided photos of my property to assist in understanding certain parts of this statement. My understanding of the building code is that its intent is to protect the health, safety, and welfare. To date, the focus has been initially on the imperfections in the lining of the pipe and more recently on who is qualified to assess that lining. In the first hearing, Mr. Cantor referred to section 3002.3.1 of the code that states drainage fittings shall not have ledges, shoulders, or reductions that can retard or obstruct drainage flow in the piping. I could not find a definition of a ledge, shoulder, or reduction that defines to a layperson what these are or what quantifies acceptable variances. If I understand this correctly, the county has identified one risk. There is a risk that the drainage flow could be retarded by the imperfections in the liner. If that risk were realized, there could be a backup into my home. I am the person who would be impacted by that. I have heard no other risks to any other parties. The sewer pipe is part of a greater system which includes my house, my land, and my homeowners association land. You cannot assess the risk of a specific solution without understanding the environment and the risk of the alternative. From my perspective, the impact of the alternative is significantly greater than the risk of leaving the lining in place. I will try to explain my assessment of the risk based on the facts as I understand them. When assessing risk level, one typically considers what would be the impact should the risk be realized, and what is the probability or likelihood that the risk will be realized. If the relining is kept in place, I acknowledge that there is a small risk that the sewer may back up. As Mr. Cantor indicated, the pipe itself causes friction, and thus any sewer pipe has some degree of this risk. The question then goes to the likelihood of that adverse event occurring. I would like to share my assessment of the impact and probability of this risk, as well as the mitigations that I have in place. I understand the potential impact. The root cause of the original problem in November 2019, which necessitated this work, was literally roots. There were tree roots in a small section of the pipe under my patio. This blockage resulted in a backup through a drain in the concrete floor of my utility room. The backup was confined to a small portion of the utility room. It did not damage any of my property. The immediate problem was resolved when a plumber hydrojetted the line to remove the fine tree roots that were obstructing the flow. Should a backup occur in the future, I understand what needs to be done. I now have a water alarm on the floor by the drain that would alert me immediately should there be a backup. I would call the plumber and have them diagnose the problem by putting a camera down the line and taking the necessary steps to repair and sanitize. My contract with Freedom Plumbers includes a 20-year warranty. I would leverage this warranty as necessary. There are other options that I have to mitigate this risk. For example, I could potentially negotiate with the plumber to provide a periodic camera inspection of the lining to make sure it is functioning correctly over the 20-year period. I believe that the probability of the sewer becoming obstructive is relatively low, and I base this on the following evidence. The manufacturer has inspected a video of the sewer liner and stated it appears that installed liner complies with the standard and accepted manufacturer best practices for CIPP installations. Any wrinkles noted did not affect fit, form, or function of the CIPP and are considered normal. The inspector has NASCO LACP, Lateral Assessment Certificate Program certification. This is the specific required certification identified by Mr. Cantor in the first hearing. The manufacturer has been in business for more than 20 years. The sewer has been videoed on 4 separate occasions. In January 2020, immediately after the installation, in July 2020, in November 2020, and in December 2020. On each occasion, the video has shown that the pipe is clear and that there is no standing water in the pipe. There has been no evidence in the video showing that the pipe is not functioning as required. The pipe itself has excellent slope. I was told by 2 different plumbers of this. My understanding is the pipe is approximately 4 feet deep at the patio door, 6 feet deep at the edge of the patio, and then drops significantly at to the main at the bottom of the hill. Mr. Salinas has indicated that the slope in this section is approximately 45 degrees. My understanding is that this good slope further reduces the risk of a backup. Prior to this work, the primary threat to the performance of the cast iron pipe was tree root incursion. The lining significantly reduces the risk that tree roots will penetrate the pipe. The lining further reduces the risk that the sewage seeping undetected into the ground should corrosion of the cast iron pipe occur in the future. Over the 16 months that the lining has been in place, I've experienced no issues with drainage. Additionally, other problems that I thought were unrelated to this were resolved. I thought the musty odor in my utility room was due to my Reston Lake Ann air conditioning. However, there was no odor last summer. I also frequently had an odor with the washing machine that I assumed was due to the high efficiency machine. That went away once the sewer line was replaced. In summary, the potential impact of a sewer backup is well understood by me, and I believe the evidence indicates that the probability of this happening is low. For me, this is an acceptable level of risk. If the county were to reject this work, I believe that the only remedy would be to dig up the pipe and replace it with a new one. This is a high impact to me for several reasons. This is not a new property with ideal conditions. This is a townhouse on slab in the middle of a row of 5. The house was built in 1966, 55 years ago. The sewer runs out the back of the house underneath the stone patio and deep beneath the roots of a healthy 50-year-old maple tree. Red maples can live up to 100 years. This is a very large tree with a circumference of 118 inches and a diameter of more than 3 feet. The health of this tree is important to me. I have regularly engaged an arborist to keep the tree healthy. An unhealthy tree would present a high and unacceptable level of risk to me and my physical property, both my safety and property. My understanding is that replacing the sewer line would require a deep excavation. This would cause serious harm to the tree and would leave me no choice but to remove the tree to protect my property and my life before any work could be done. To remove the tree would also require me to obtain approval from my 2 homeowners associations and spend thousands of dollars to remove and replace the tree, replace the patio, and restore all plantings on community property. I am sure there are other risks of such an excavation that I am not fully aware of. The lining is in the pipe. I cannot just have it removed and revert back to the original cast iron pipe. I made the decision to have the relining performed after getting estimates and opinions from multiple licensed contractors. I chose to have the pipe relined despite the fact that this cost me several $1,000s more than a spot repair, because I thought it offered not only corrective maintenance, but also preventive maintenance to reduce the risk of tree root incursion and extend the life of the pipe. I did this because I plan to stay in this house and I wanted to protect my environment. I researched CIPP relining and found that it's been used in the US since the 1980s. I thought this work was routine. What I did not realize is that my work was essentially a guinea pig for Fairfax County. In the first hearing, Mr. Cantor was asked if the county had approved relining done by other contractors. Mr. Cantor responded, there may have been 1 or 2 others. Thus, it is not clear whether this type of work has ever been approved by Fairfax County. It is clear that the county has done a thorough job of inspection to protect my interest. It is also clear that the county is knowledgeable on the code and has experience in inspecting sewer lines. What is not clear to me is whether the county has enough experience and knowledge of the CIPP technology to reasonably evaluate its function. In this regard, I have a higher level of confidence in the assessment by the manufacturer. I believe that the plumber has provided the information requested by the board. I re-listened to both of the hearings and the motions, and the decisions both indicated that a letter from the manufacturer would be acceptable to the board. The letter from the manufacturer includes the inspector's active NASCO LACP certification, the certification identified by Mr. Cantor in the February meeting. I also believe that the term third party has not been clearly defined for the purpose of this hearing and has caused some of the conflict. The 2 parties in this hearing are the county and the contractor. From my perspective, the manufacturer is a third party, although not an independent third party. While the manufacturer may not be independent, I believe they are well qualified to assess the installation of their own product. No one knows if this sewer line will experience a backup in the future. It could back up this month, or it could go 20 years without a problem. Prior to the tree root issue in November 2019, I lived here 26 years without ever experiencing a drainage problem, despite a cast iron pipe with a rough, scaly interior. Is it reasonable to require me to incur significant expense, destroy portions of my property, and kill a tree that I enjoy every day to reduce a risk that may never be realized? I believe that the manufacturer's inspection, my warranty with the plumber, the significant slope of the pipe, the multiple video inspections over the course of a year showing no obstructions or standing water, and the fact that the drainage has been functioning well for 16 months indicates that the risk to my health and safety is low. I believe that this satisfies the intent of the building code. I request that the county and the board allow the lining to remain in place so that I can continue to enjoy my property at an acceptable level of risk. If the rules allow, I'll be happy to answer any questions from the board, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I'm going to call on board members at this point to see if you have questions for Mr. Salinas or Ms. Avis. George Page, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just for clarification from Mr. Salinas, Dan Reed is an employee of WRT, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, fine. That's all I have.
Rob Fisher?
No, I'm good, Dave. Thank you.
No questions? Okay, Darren Shoemate. Darren?
No questions.
Amato Fernandez?
There we go. Yeah, I have Amato has a question for Mr. Salinas. The 3 additional certifications that you listed on your, or that you discussed on your discussion or in your presentation, are those pertinent to the subject matter at hand? And should they have been listed in the letter, or are they part and parcel of the overall NASCO certification that was listed in the letter?
They're part and parcel of the overall certification. The specific certification that was discussed in the February meeting was the LACP, which is the lateral assessment certification, and he has that.
So does the certification listed encompass that lateral certification?
No, he doesn't specifically mention there the LACP. What he's specifically mentioning is his credentials with NASCO, which is that number.
Okay.
To my understanding, the number brings up all of the credentials of the licensee.
Okay, which includes the LACP.
That is correct.
Okay, very good.
May I say something? You can look up the number on the NASCO website and it shows the specific credentials that the person has. I've looked that up and they have 3 credentials.
Right.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just trying to get clear. Thank you. That's all.
Wayne Bryant, do you have any questions?
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. And I don't either. So I'm going to turn the floor over at this point to Richard Grace in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. See if I can get things together here. So we've been at this for several hearings. We've been at this for several months. And one of the things that has been made clear, at least on the county's part, and what I thought, at least with the board as well, is that we would be acceptable to getting a third-party certification for this CIPP installation at Wainwright Drive. The letter that was sent last Friday, we looked at it, we evaluated it again, and once again, it doesn't fall under the definition or the criteria of a third-party certification. If we go back to the February 10 hearing, the resolution itself said that action on the appeal was tabled, and I quote, to allow the appellant to secure and submit to the county a third-party review and certification. This is not a third-party review and certification. This was clarified to Mr. Salinas on March 9th that when we moved the appeal forward to April, in an email that stated, we understand you're in the process of obtaining a certification from a third party. So again, we keep talking third party, according to I can't remember what agency it it defines it as an independent individual who's going to be evaluating and inspecting this. During the April 14th hearing, Mr. Salinas had made this statement saying, I'm in agreement with Mr. Grace that the letter should be signed by the NASCO certified inspector with his credentials stating that he reviewed the video and passed their criteria. The letter that was presented is not signed by Mr. Reed, I'm sorry. It's not signed by Mr. Reed. Also in that same hearing, board member Fernandez indicated that what Richard is asking, which is the clarification for third-party certification, is consistent with what was what he had expected and what the board was expecting, that the individual that is reviewing the material is in fact the NASCO certified the NASCO certification in order to be qualified for the review. So we keep talking about a third-party certification, but what was presented last Friday was not a third-party certification. Mr. Salinas talks about the last resolution and complying with the last resolution, and I will point out that directly from the resolution, it indicates that it complies with the product manufacturer's installation instructions and applicable codes and standards. The letter itself does not indicate that this installation complies with the manufacturer's installation instructions and the applicable codes and standards. It simply says that it appears that the installed liners comply with standard WRT best practices and standard accepted WRT best practices. It doesn't even say that it complies with the manufacturer's instructions. It says that it complies with best practices. So even that isn't what would fall under the criteria of a third-party certification. This is not how third-party certifications are written. Generally, it's I so-and-so hereby certified that I reviewed the installation and it complies with the manufacturer's installation instructions, the applicable plumbing codes, and the applicable standards associated with CIPP. This letter is not a third-party certification, which is what we've been looking to find all this time. Because we received that letter on Friday, I've had little time to actually look into Mr. Reed's certification, but I did in fact get in touch with a Kathy Lloyd from NASCO. She's the training program coordinator for NASCO. She also holds those three certifications, the PAPC, the MAPC, and the LAPC. And she told me that having those three certifications is not the appropriate classification to do a CIPP inspection. The LAPC allows the individual to identify problems within the lateral, but it does not give that individual the qualifications to say that that lateral is eligible for CIPP lining, nor does it give that individual the qualifications to do the inspection of the finished product. And again, that was I talked to Ms. Lloyd on Monday. She also gave me a phone number to reach out to a Greg Moochmeyer, who is the master trainer for the ITCP program, which is the appropriate classification for CIPP inspections. So even putting the name of Dan Reed on this letter rather than a certification, putting it on this letter, the qualifications for this individual to certify this installation is still in question. And that comes directly from Kathy Lloyd. Like I said, she has the same three certifications herself and told me that it's not the appropriate classification for CIPP inspections. So I guess the last thing that I'd like to cover is if we look at USBC, USBC section 119.3 states that members of the LBBCA shall be selected by the locality on a basis of their ability to render fair and competent decisions regarding application of the USBC. So application of the USBC, if we look at 102.1, the purpose, and Ms. Avis alluded to this as well, is that The purpose of the USBC is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I can certainly understand and sympathize with Ms. Avis's plea to, not have to endanger her trees or lawn, but that isn't what we're tasked to do. We're tasked to protect the health, safety, welfare of residents, not necessarily trees. But again, I understand. Also, there's talk about continued justification of the product because it's been in place for 16 months. Well, that's not the USBC application that is in question here. This is an inspection failure appeal. This is not a performance appeal. If it were being based, if we were basing a decision regarding the application of the USBC for performance, we would have a different appeal. If you go to section 106.3.2, it's use of the performance code. And we have a path, and it says that compliance with the provisions of a nationally recognized performance code when approved as a modification, again, that's through code modification, shall be considered to constitute compliance with this code. That's not where this appeal is. This appeal isn't based on compliance with provisions of a nationally recognized performance code. This appeal is about inspection failure. So I'd like to keep our focus on that as well. In conclusion, like I said, we've done everything that we can to try to move forward with this in a positive fashion, and that the light at the end of the tunnel was a third-party certification. And if we could get this third-party certification, we can move forward. But what has been presented is not a third-party certification. It's not a certification at all, really. And as far as third-party, it closely resembles a first or a second party, but nothing close to a third party. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. I will ask though that if James Cantor has anything to add, please do so now.
This is James Cantor. No, at this time you've stated it quite well, and it's really about the qualifications of the inspector and a third-party inspection, and that's where we're at. Thank you.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to call on Mr. Hayden Cotting to see if there's anything that he'd like to add.
No, I just had a question that go back to Mr. Salinas maybe later about whether an actual inspection of the property was ever done or was just a videotaped inspection looked at by the experts that he got the letter from.
It's taped.
Thank you.
Richard, can you answer that? You or James would have information about county inspections on site?
I don't think he was asking for a county inspection. I think the question was geared toward Mr. Salinas.
Mr. Salinas, can I ask you at this point to indicate if anybody other than you or your employees or the county folks have been out and actually did an on-site, or was the additional individuals review based on looking at the video?
Lateral lining, and so thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lateral lining inspections don't require the county to go out to the property. We submit the video. Those are that's the way it's done. Now, when it comes to Freedom Plumbers personnel, yes, many of our personnel, including myself, have visited, actually, my inspectors have visited the property for service and the inspection of that lateral liner.
But nobody else other than what you just mentioned, correct?
That is correct. It is not
Okay.
standard practice for Fairfax to go out on lining inspections.
Okay, thank you. Richard, back to you.
That was all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. George Page, do you have any questions for the county staff?
Yeah, I would like Richard Grace to just clarify something for me. I was making notes as you were laying out the issues that you have with this. One is, why is Dan Reed not acceptable as a third party? Is it because he's an employee of WRT? Is it because he didn't sign the letter? Or is it because he doesn't have the correct certifications? Which one of those, or all of them, or any of them?
All of the above, sir.
All of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
all of the above. By him being an employee of WRT, that makes it a first or a second party, not a third party. As far as having the right certification, that was something that was made clear during the April 14th that we wanted to verify that the credentials that were being provided were the appropriate credentials. And from what I have discovered on Monday, these are not the appropriate credentials. And what was the third?
Well, the credentials, the fact that he was an employee of WRT, and that he didn't sign the letter. You said he didn't sign the letter, which made it a problem.
Well, and that was, again, during the April 14th hearing, one of the things that was brought up was that the third party would be signing the letter, and Mr. Salinas himself said that he's in agreement that the letter should be signed by the NASCO certified inspector.
I believe your issue was that he did not sign, that Reed did not sign the letter. I think that's what I heard. But if
Yes.
if that was just a misstatement, that's fine.
No, that is the third. I agreed to all three.
Okay, so if he did sign the letter, things would be different.
If he did sign the letter, if he signed a certification letter, because again, the other part to this is that letter is not a certification letter. It's simply saying that it's not following the manufacturer's instructions, the applicable codes and standards, that it appears that it's following best practices. That's all that letter says. It's not
Okay.
a certification letter.
Okay, and just one more question quickly. At the last meeting, it was revealed. I mean, I think most of us knew that the county sometimes outsources the inspection process to others, like for elevators and other things like that. Are we applying this consistently across all of those cases? Like, for example, when the county has somebody inspect an elevator, it's not somebody who makes elevators? Are we being consistent here?
We are the county is consistent in who they approve for third-party inspectors. Yes, sir.
That's not the answer. No. People, do people who inspect elevators for the county, are they employees of elevator companies?
I can't answer that since I'm not part of the elevator program. I'm sorry.
Okay, because that would be an inconsistency here, but all right, so we don't know that. All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Rob Fisher, questions?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I would like to ask Mr. Salinas a question. Why didn't Mr. Reed sign the letter? Why did somebody else sign it? And I apologize if you've already mentioned that.
No. That's a phenomenal question. Unfortunately, that was an oversight on my behalf on who was to sign the letter. I was so entrenched on getting the NASCO guy with the proper credentials, which were discussed in prior meetings, on this letter. That was my number one goal, and I finally got that letter on Friday. And when it came to the signature on the letter, that one bypassed me.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all, Rob?
Let me just revisit. Mr. Salinas, is there any reason to think that there would be a problem with getting Mr. Reed to sign the letter?
None.
If he actually holds the credentials?
None whatsoever. I just need to ask him to get the signature on the letter, if that is allowed to be able to get this letter to pass.
Okay. That's all I got, Dave.
Darren Shoemate, questions?
I'm
I think
muted.
you
I'm
said-
sorry. I was muted. I was muted. I didn't have any questions. No.
Amato Fernandez, questions?
Yeah, I've got a few, but I want to direct one. David, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
All right. Does
If it's, I guess if it's relevant now, you could also wait till we are done with the hearing and we
No,
can
no,
discuss it.
this is relevant, I think. So let me ask you, the first question I've got is we're evaluating the response to the resolution that you wrote. Is that correct?
Well, the resolution, yes, but the resolution is intended to summarize, the reason that we tabled and what was expected to occur over the next month. And that's, there's a recognition. We had, I don't know whether it was an hour and a half or 2 hours, the last meeting. And, it's hard to encapsulate, that discussion in one paragraph.
Understood. But I guess where I'm starting from is that the resolution does not make reference to a third-party inspection. That's number one. It makes reference to that Waterline Renewal Technologies is to secure and submit to the county a letter indicating a review of the subject CIP installation, which complies with the product manufacturer's installation instructions, as Mr. Grace has indicated.
Yeah.
Which also complies with applicable codes and standards, as he's indicated.
Yeah.
And such letter is to include the name of the person who performed the review of the installation, not just viewing, but a review of the installation, a statement that they're certified as competent, an assessment, and the details of the accreditation program under which they are certified. So I guess now I'm asking Richard.
Well, can I clarify one thing, Amato? Also, if you go back to the resolution from the February 10th meeting, it talks about tabling and to submit to the county a third-party review and inspection at the post installation. And I would point out, when you go to the code in Chapter 2, definitions that are relevant to this include a definition of third party agency, etc. But I think probably at this point, that's something we should discuss, if it's relevant or you want to discuss that when the board is discussing a motion. Right now, maybe focus on questions to the county.
Well, Mr. Grace, of the four things that you indicated that are a challenge with this letter, one is the fact that Dan Reed is an employee of WRT, which, as far as I understood, we knew that back when the resolution was written, and we knew what we asked for that individual to provide their certification criteria and information. So we didn't ask for another individual to be found. So at least that was my understanding. And since I made since I'm the one that initiated the resolution, now I'm talking from my understanding was that Dan Reed we needed to find out that Dan Reed had the qualifications necessary. So the employee of WRT, we all knew, at least I knew that. And if that's an objection, or if that's a criteria for not accepting the letter, then I think we're not responding to where we were at the last meeting. The correct certification is a check, needs to have it. That was what was asked for. And the review of the criteria as specified is not addressed correctly in the letter. That I understand. And signature of the letter, if that signature by Dan Reed would satisfy the condition of third party on this appeal, then that would be something that Mr. Salinas has already said he could achieve. So that's it. That's what I've got for now.
Okay. Wayne, Brian, do you have any questions of the county?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to now, these are, I guess, closing remarks. Mr. Salinas, you or Ms. Avis have anything you want to add or respond to with respect to what the county has said?
Oh, this is Ricky. Before I say anything, I want to allow Ms. Avis to answer with a yay or nay if she has something to say.
Yeah, the only thing that I wanted to say is that in the hearing, and I have the time of the hearing in the first February hearing, Mr. Cantor indicated that the certificate he was looking for was the LACP certificate. I believe he was reading that off of some of the manufacturer instructions. And thus, until today, it was not indicated that a different certification was required.
Okay, and when it comes to me, Ricky Salinas here, I do apologize. It's this is a shifting goalpost from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and the goalpost completely shifts fields. It's like it completely flips over. When we had this meeting last month, we discussed multiple times about if we get the name of the NASCO guy with his credentials to be added onto the third paragraph, line XYZ, will that satisfy the letter? Is the language okay is what I picked up, and I picked up as yes, the language is okay. When it comes to an official certifying letter, I don't even know where to get one with a specific language which Mr. Grace keeps to himself but doesn't share with those who he's demanding to fulfill his requirements. It's all here, right here, but he doesn't share with me who's working for him to get this established, right? The last meeting was specifically name, credential. That's what it was. And yes, signature. My bad. I missed that. No discussions on what certifications did he have to have, at least in my understanding, because I didn't see that in last month's hearing. We didn't mention MACP, LACP, ITCP, or any PPs. We didn't mention anything. The only thing we had to go by was the February hearing, which specifically mentioned by the mouth of the inspections manager, Mr. Cantor, LACP. That's what we ran with. And now in this hearing, the goal went from here to complete opposite field where ITCP is now what we need. No mentions before. Nothing about changing the letter completely and flipping it on its head. Disregard all prior language. Go with an official third-party certification language that indicates A through Z in a specific order how I want it, me being Mr. Richard Grace. Nothing. All that was mentioned was what's in the order, which was what I did, and I delivered except for the signature. And now, again, we weaseled our way completely out of it. I don't know what else to do. I'm sure that your time, as well as my time, as well as Mrs. Ava's time, is now completely spent. This is no longer about the interest and the safety of the homeowner. It's almost like a vendetta. We want to get this done. Everything works great. There's nothing wrong with the technology to the professional eye. It is a wonderful installation. All of a sudden, this is no longer a performance issue. This is an inspection issue, which we provided satisfactory judgment on the liner by what my understanding is a third party. I don't know what else to do because now I'm going to get another order, which I don't even know if it's going to suffice for my Mr. Grace's needs for next month when he finds a new Bible of people to get things to put against everything that I have done in the prior month. And you done wrong again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just don't know what else to do. I'm hoping that today we can come to a decision for the betterment, for just to conclude this matter so I can move on to the other liners as well. This liner is a great liner. It has great pitch. It has no defects. It has been viewed by many, many people. People who have proper certifications to look at it, and people who have no idea what they're looking at. Everybody has seen it, and it's a great liner to those with a trained eye. That's all I got for today. Thank you.
Thank you. George, do you have any further questions for Mr. Salinas?
No, I don't have any more questions. Thanks.
Rob?
No, David, but I do have one for Mr. Grace. Is it appropriate to ask that question now, or?
I'm going to let him make his final
Okay.
statement.
Okay.
And in fact, I'll let him make his final statement now, and then we'll go through the board to see if they have questions for either party. Richard, Grace, final statements?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regardless of what Mr. Salinas says, there's not a vendetta here. I mean, really. So one of the, if you look at the resolution, it says name of the person who performed the review of the installation, a statement that they are certified as competent to perform such reviews. Again, I got this name, Dan Reed, on Friday at 3 p.m. And on Monday, I started to investigate it. I got in touch with NASCO, Kathy Lloyd, who indicated that that certification that Dan Reed holds does not make him competent to do this inspection. As far as the third party goes and the resolution goes, there was discussions between Mr. Conover, Mr. Salinas, and myself in emails. And one of the things that was said that Mr. Salinas is totally aware of is I said, I think there's still confusion here with this resolution language, at least on the county's part. This language implies that Waterline Renewal Technologies is a third party, and they are not. I believe the whole premise of moving in this direction, at least from what I believe I've been hearing from the board and what the county has agreed to, was to include certification from an independent third party, no different than any other third party certifications required by the USBC. This gives us a path. The person who performs the review provides their certification credentials and certifies the installation complies with the manufacturer's installation instructions, along with the applicable codes and standards, should be an independent third party, not a first or second party. The board, if the board is looking for a first or second party, how is this justified when applying the USBC? USBC does not permit manufacturers to be their own third-party certifiers. This information was provided to Mr. Salinas. He's not as uninformed as he is portraying to you. We thought this third-party certification was a valid path forward, although that has not been provided. This is not a vendetta. It is simple logic. The letter that was provided is not a certification. It's something that says it appears to follow standard practices from WRT. It doesn't say it's following the manufacturer's installation instructions. It doesn't say it's following the code. It doesn't say it's following the standards. I don't know how much clearer I can make this. We're looking for a third-party certification. That's all we've been asking for this whole time. And third party is defined by NSF, I should say. And you know, I really don't know how much clearer I can make this. And like I said, from February, the resolution said third party. third party, third party, third party. This is not a third party. If this board believes that it is, then this board believes that it is, and vote so in the way that you think. That's really all I got. Thank you for letting me respond.
Thank you. Okay, George, any questions for either party?
Yeah, just for Richard Grace, this is George Page. Richard, you said that the USBC states that the third party is not a member of the manufacturer, or is not an employee of the manufacturer. That's what I heard. Is that? I didn't find that anywhere. That would actually change a lot of things here if that in fact were written down somewhere in the books.
Well, give me a second and I'll pull it up.
It's Chapter 2 of the USBC, page 2-15. The term third-party certification agency, third-party certified, third-party tested are defined. And also in that chapter, the terms approved and approved agency are defined. And I'm jumping in front of you, Richard. I apologize, but I had those open.
That's quite all right, Mr. Chairman.
Say that again, Mr. Conover. Where is
Page
that?
2-15 of the big thick blue book. I'm going to the Virginia Residential Code.
Oh, residential code. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. 2-15.
Yeah.
Whereabouts on the page?
Up left. So the manufacturer, pardon me.
My book says certification of third-party certified, defined, certification obtained by the manufacturer.
Yes, and then if you continue to read, it refers to the manufacturer relying on an approved third-party certification agency, which is defined above.
Right.
Okay.
Which doesn't say anything about their relationship to a manufacturer.
Well,
not in my book.
Any other questions? I'm trying to help, but I don't want to jump in front of the. Maybe we can have that discussion. When we have a motion on, for the board to discuss. I don't know. I don't want to jump in front of the county.
Okay, Richard. I don't see where it's written that the third party has to be independent of the manufacturer. But I mean, if it is.
Well, okay. Mr. Page, quite frankly, if manufacturers were allowed to certify their own products, then they wouldn't need people like UL or other nationally recognized testing agencies. If I could certify that I made this product and it does what it's supposed to do, and I don't need somebody else to verify that what I say is correct, then the whole premise of third party would not even be in the codes at all.
Okay, well, I just hope
I have a question.
I'm going to accept that as an opinion because it's not written in the book. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and the intent of a third party is to avoid conflicts of interest.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Rob Fisher, questions?
Yeah. Mr. Grace.
Yes, sir.
Do you feel like, not do you feel, would approving this installation establish any kind of precedent for future installations like this?
I'm not real clear as to what the question really is. But I'm going to say
I guess
yes.
what I'm trying to say is if we approve the appellant's objection, have we established any kind of precedent in the future?
Oh, I get it. Absolutely. Absolutely. This appeal is about this appeal is about an inspection rejection. And what this board decides is whether to uphold that rejection or to overturn that rejection. So if this board decides to overturn this rejection, I anticipate that you're going to be seeing a lot more of these hearings to overturn the county's inspection rejection comments. So absolutely.
But you know, we have so far departed from the initial rejection. You know, we're not really talking about whether or not the pipe is acceptable anymore. We're now moved into a whole different area. And I don't know that that's a question more as much as a comment, but all right. Well, thank you, Richard, for answering my question.
You're welcome, sir.
Darren Shoemate, any questions?
Yeah, and this is to anybody. This is to either Ricky or to Richard. Is this product UL listed? I mean, it was a good point that Richard brought up about the UL testing laboratories. Is this product UL listed?
No. No.
I personally, this is Ricky. I'm not aware. I will get that answer for you if I reach out to the manufacturer.
No, this isn't UL. This product is not UL listed because it's not a product. It's a method. Every product that comes from this method is different in one form or another. It's not like a manufactured product that can have a UL listing. So it does not have a UL listing.
Okay.
Any other questions, Darren?
I don't think so, no.
Amato Fernandez?
Richard, does you indicated that this was an inspection failure appeal because the inspection was rejected. So it's basically the fact that the procedure for which the inspection is handled is what's causing the failure, not necessarily the installation. It's validation that the installation was done properly. Is that?
If we get to the root of this and the very beginning of this, if you read the appeal is that the appellant is appealing the decision of the building official, which was a rejection comment. Oh, I'm sorry, which was a rejection comment that initially came from the building division. And actually, I think Mr. Cantor can probably answer that even better than I can.
Right. If we walk this back to the beginning, it began because the county did not approve or did not believe that the installation was appropriate. And in the process of getting to where we are today, we've agreed, based on the last resolution, we've agreed that a separate certification that the installation was done in accordance with codes and with manufacturer's instructions would be acceptable to the county. And so what we're now attempting to resolve is how that vehicle reads in order to be an acceptable document to the county.
And I would agree with that. We provided an alternative to that rejection comment, and that was a third-party certification. We have not received that.
Right. Okay. Yes, I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Wayne Bryant, any questions?
No questions at this point, no.
Okay, I have one for both Richard and Mr. Salinas to try and summarize this. And Amato was getting at it. So I want to make sure I'm accurately presenting a summary of where we are. Because I'll use this when I frame this up for the board members. So that's why I'm keeping it out on the floor. The decision, the original appeal was that the video reviewer from the county did not feel, based on their review of the video, that the installation, the product as installed, did not meet the requirements of the Virginia Residential Code. And specifically the code modification that the county had provided, since this is a new technology. And so we had a hearing on that, and there's a lot of discussion. Would you agree about whether it does or doesn't, and the code modification? So the thinking was, if there were a third party that could review it, that was acceptable to the county, then technically the county could punt and say, fine, it's been approved or evaluated by another competent party, and therefore everything's okay. And in theory, then the appeal would have been withdrawn, because there would have been someone acceptable to the county that said the as installed condition of this does meet the code modification or the intent of the code. And of course, now we're into a discussion about whether a particular individual is or isn't a third party, and credentials, et cetera. But at the end of the day, doesn't the decision, well, ultimately for both Mr. Grace and Mr. Salinas, doesn't what's on the table at this point, given all the data we have, including this additional information about a certifier and accreditation and so on, ultimately we're having to decide whether or not we believe, based on the evidence provided over the last 4 or so months, whether or not we agree with Mr. Salinas that the as installed installation meets the code modification and its intent, or it doesn't. And that ultimately, isn't that what we're having to focus on? And that's a question for both Mr. Salinas and Mr. Grace. Does anybody want to go first?
Yes, sir. I apologize. I was muted. Mr. Chairman, I would agree that that's an accurate assessment. The installation was permitted through code modification with conditions listed within the code modification. One of those conditions was a pre-installation video inspection conducted by the building division, and the other was a post-installation inspection conducted by the building division. The post-installation video failed, and that's what's being appealed. That's what needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Mr. Salinas, would you agree with my summary?
I agree with your summary, Mr. Chairman. And you know, when we're walking back now to the very beginning on how we got here, I mean, there are so many reasons why we got to this very specific letter. And when we were talking about independent third-party certifiers, Mr. Chairman, I worked very hard to find independent people who did not want to get involved, because there's not really official criteria on what liabilities and what are they supposed to make a judgment on. So then the manufacturer was then considered for this, and this is how this letter got here. So, I mean, yes, everything came through. The fact is, Fairfax should have never allowed residential lining to start. They do not have the training, the certifications, or any knowledge whatsoever about NASCO or lining. Their inspections department doesn't have it.
Okay.
And now we are here. So I agree with
I just was looking for a confirmation about my summary, and you seem to say you kind of agree. I saw Mr. Cantor had his hand up. Did you want to add anything Mr. Grace said about my summary?
Yes, sir. The summary is correct. And if we were to have an appropriate third party with the correct credentials, and the question was asked about setting a precedent, and that really is a big concern of mine, because whatever the outcome of this case is, we have multiple other CIPP installations going to be installed. And we need to make sure that if we're going to go down the third party route, there's a clear set of acceptable credentials, et cetera, that everybody can follow the same way. So I agree with your statement, but the correct inspector certification is what whoever does that third party certification should have, and it should be an independent third party. Thanks.
Understood. I see a guest has their hand up. Again, I was asking a question of both parties as part of the questioning process. Darren, do you have another question for either party?
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
Well, wait, I have to close the hearing and then we'll get to that. Okay.
I have a question.
Wayne.
Yes, Mr. Cantor. In the code under section 113.7.1, it states that each building official charged with the enforcement of the USBC shall have a written policy establishing the minimum acceptable qualifications for third-party inspectors. And then it goes on to state that has to have the format, what they're supposed to be, and all of it. So does the county have sort of written policy that they can point to and say, if you're going to use a third-party inspector, this is our policy?
We do have that for other areas of inspections, CIPP being new technology, new code modifications, newly being adopted to the code. This is something that we're going to be addressing soon, but I would probably defer to the NASCO ITSP, I think it is, inspector certification as the correct certification for doing this type of an inspection.
So I guess in terms of, opening depending on if we agree to uphold this, uphold this appeal, in terms of opening the floodgates, you can close the floodgates by just coming up with the written policy for the code.
And that is something we're working on, yes.
Okay, thank you. No other
Thank you.
questions.
Okay, I'm going to ask Ms. Avis, do you have anything that would respond to the question I asked both parties about the summary of where we are?
I just have one question of you, and if it's not appropriate, you don't have to answer it. My understanding was that the decision of the board did not set a precedent for any future cases. I thought that was documented, and I just wanted a clarification of that.
That would continue. That's generally on every resolution that the board has, passed, where, it's solely for the case and its surrounding circumstances, doesn't serve as a precedent for other cases. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing phase, remind board members that if something new comes up in discussion that hasn't been on the floor, I'll feel compelled to reopen and let both sides, respond. So at this point, I'm going to ask for, I think, the appropriate motion at this point, since things were tabled, is to have a motion and a second a vote to open back up, to take it off the table, and to then have a motion
Dave,
for approval or disapproval. Pardon me?
This is Darren.
Yes.
I move to uphold the appeal, and this is why.
Let me first get a second.
Well, I'll second the motion to untable this. How about that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow Robert's rules. I'm a little hazy. I'll make a chairman's prerogative. I get this at this point that it's off the table, and I'm looking for a motion on the appeal. Darren made a motion to uphold the appeal. Is there a second?
Yeah, this is George Page. I'll second that.
Okay. Go ahead, Darren.
All right, so this is what I see. We're getting into the minutia, and we've spent an hour and a half in the minutia over what's a third-party inspector and what's not. And it seems like the last, and I can't count how many, 3 or 4 of these hearings that Ricky Salinas, does a great job of defending his case, and we keep coming back. And in fact, it's almost like Ricky's part of the board now. Just seems kind of like, and what I see is, while what Ricky has shown us in this letter does not meet the exact letter of this third-party inspector, it certainly meets the intent, because that inspector appears to me to have the qualifications, and he's out looking at, or it sounds like he didn't go to the site to inspect, but he looked at the videos that he has stated that it meets the requirements of installation of that product. Now, I did in the meantime go look at the specifications on the waterlinerenewal.com website, and I did not see a UL listing, but what I did see was that the material is ASTM certified. It satisfies ASTM certifications, and it lists, I don't know, 3 or 4 numbers. So the product is manufactured to the American Standard of Testing of Materials standards, and there's several that are listed. So as Richard said, that this is actually a process that has to be inspected. It seems to me that it is absolutely reasonable to have somebody who is an expert in the product, even though he's the manufacturer, and even though he is technically a first party to the manufacturer, a second party to Rick, a second party to the owner, that would be adequate. It seems to me that is absolutely reasonable. I know it's done with fire alarms. I know it's done with steel construction. He has no conflict of interest as I see it. He has no conflict of interest to approve something that's no good. He's going to make sure it's good because it is his product, his reputation, his standards that's on the line. So that's why I think that this should be upheld.
And I'm going to again repeat what the question I asked a moment ago. The appeal is to the decision of the county's video reviewer as to the as installed condition of the material / pipe. Does it or does it not meet the code modification that the county provided? The issue with third parties and certifiers and additional individuals looking at it is additional data, but our focus on this motion is solely based on the evidence that we have, going back to the videos, our review of the videos, other people's review of the videos and their qualifications or not. Do we agree that it's installed in accordance with the code modification and its intent or not? That's, to me, that is the issue at hand. And I think both parties, the county and Mr. Salinas, agreed to my summary of that when I put it in a question to them a moment ago. So we have a reason for the, thank you, Darren, for your explanation of your motion. Any other discussion? George, Rob, Amato, Wayne?
This is Wayne, Brian. I have to go back to the resolution that you prepared and that we all reviewed and made some edits last month. And as I review that resolution, Mr. Salinas has complied with that. It doesn't go into third party. We had that long discussion, what's third party, what's not. We've done that again today. But essentially, it asked a few specific things be added to the letter. It doesn't say that the person that reviewed it had to sign it. As I look at that resolution, he's complied with that resolution.
Yeah.
Okay. Amato or Rob, any?
Dave, yeah, when you talked about the code modification, what code modification are you making specific reference to in your?
That's the one that I recall. I've got a pile of papers here. I could sift through it, but that's one I recall our seeing in late 2020. That was in other words, when Mr. Salinas got the permit for this installation, the county came along and said, okay, you're going to have to do this and this and this and this, because those things weren't specific in the code right now as adopted.
Okay.
And so it's whatever it was in December or January that we saw that was kind of like, I don't want to use the word checklist, but there were a number of steps that had to occur.
All right. I'm going to agree with Wayne and what he just said. I think this has been I think the process that we've been going through has been sort of a learning process for how to has been a learning process in terms of what the necessary requirements are going to be in order to approve this. But all this criteria wasn't established on day one. It's been evolving on every meeting that we've had more clarity and more understanding and better. And so, yes, so sitting here right now, we've got this whole list of third-party requirements, which makes sense, but that's not where we started. And I agree with Wayne in that when I look at the resolution, Mr. Salinas has complied. Some of the language in the letter is a little wishy-washy. I'm going to tell you that, but I think in general he's complied with what we asked for. So that's where I sit.
Rob, any comments on the motion?
I sort of am coming from where our motto is, and we have greatly departed from where we started with, is this an acceptable repair or not? And we entered into, we kind of took a left turn and headed down this path of third party. In truth, by definition, a third party is just that, a third party, not the manufacturer. But be that as it may, we've sort of taken this direction, and here we are. And this, to Mrs. Avis's point, she is the one that is ultimately at risk here with this product. And I think this is a learning. There's a takeaway here for us to kind of review next time we table something and head in a different direction.
Yeah.
Are we departing from the initial intent of the appeal? Be that as it may, I think it's time to vote on what's on the table.
And Dave,
okay. So I'm going to.
Dave,
did I hear somebody trying to speak?
Amato.
Yes.
I just wanted to say the departure, I think, has been I think it's been necessary, because I think it's clarified how this product needs to be evaluated and how the inspection failure, which is what caused this whole thing, how it can be mitigated by doing certain steps using a third-party reviewer. And this goes right to Mr. Salinas. This is some homework you need to do moving forward. But that's not where we started here. That's not where this appeal started. So I think this appeal is now setting, it's a unique situation. We've learned, we know where we think we want. I think I've heard from the county. I think they have a much clearer understanding of where they want to go with this thing. And I think that's something we probably will be involved with to some degree. But I think if the criteria is set moving forward, it should be clear. But right now, we're voting on this specific appeal. So,
right.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. The motion is to uphold the appeal. George Page?
I agree. Uphold it.
Rob Fisher,
Uphold it.
Darren Shoemate,
Uphold.
Amato Fernandez,
Uphold.
Wayne Bryant.
Uphold.
Okay. Chairman is not voting, so the vote is 5-0. Chairman not voting. The appeal is upheld. Before we're going to go to our second appeal, and I'm going to close out the first one by thanking everybody, the board members, the county staff, Mr. Salinas, Ms. Avis. I think as one of the board members just said, this has kind of been a learning experience in a way. It's a new technology. It's unfortunate that the code can't presume and have a crystal ball on new technology. So when they come into the market, you have a chapter to cover them. The codes are always lagging. Inspection processes, et cetera, responding to new technologies are always lagging the point in time at which the technology gets into the market. I think one of the county staff indicated they were working on a document that related to a written policy for third parties, et cetera. I don't know. But my thinking is that with this particular technology, it might be extremely helpful to have a 2 to 4 page document that delineates for consumers, delineates for commercial building owners and operators, for companies like Mr. Salinas and everybody, kind of what's expected and how the process works and what's acceptable and not acceptable to help clarify things. And certainly if the county decides to enter into developing a document like that can be made available to folks, I'm certainly happy to help with that. I don't want to speak for my other board members, but I have a presumption, since we've gone through this a while, that if there were a draft of something, folks would review it. But I'd like to maybe offer that, at least from my standpoint, and my thanks again to everybody that's been on the call and dealt with this issue. So what I'm going to do is we're done with the first appeal, and at 11:55, so we're going to take a 7-minute recess, if that's okay. And at 11:55, we'll come back and hear the Capital One appeal. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.